بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So tonight inshallah we'll continue with the remaining aspects of the hadith of Jabir radiallahu anhu for Hajj. The hadith, the Shaykh didn't quote, he quoted most of the hadith, and then I'll add the last remaining masail. So we've gone through all of Hajj, all of the actions of Hajj. So the next part of the hadith is where Jabir radiallahu anhu says that وَقَدِمَ عَلِيٌّ مِنَ الْيَمَنِ بِبُدْنِ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So basically Ali radiallahu anhu came with animals to slaughter. He came with animals to slaughter for him and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So basically this part of the hadith is where what he is mentioning, the aspect that I mentioned in the last lesson, and that is if a person brought the animals with him and they intended to do tamattu', we'll come to these terms in the next lesson or the lesson after inshallah, or the next lesson inshallah, then here you do not come out of ihram. So you do not shave your hair at that moment, right? That's why he says, فَحَلَّ النَّاسِ كُلُّهُمْ وَقَصَّرُوا. So everybody got out of the ihram by shortening the hair. إِلَّا النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ إِلَّا النَّبِيَّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ وَمَنْ كَانَ مَعَهُ هَدْيٌ. Except for Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم and those of them who came with an animal. Then here the aspects of Hajj starts. فَلَمَّا كَانَ يَوْمُ التَّرْوِيَةِ تَوَجَّهُوا إِلَى مِنَى. So now, the next thing you do, now on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, this is known as Yawm al-Tarwiyah, the day of Tarwiyah. So the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, they called it Tarwiyah because in the past people would now start taking their water and their food and things that they need for the days of Hajj, because it will not be as close and as convenient as it is today. So they take water, etc. So it's known as the day of Tarwiyah. Tarwiyah has to come with quenching your thirst. So on the day of Tarwiyah, the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, this is the day where it is now for those in Mecca, for a person now to go into ihram for Hajj on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, right? So those who are in Mecca or in the Haram area, they are those who did tamattu', for example, and they ended off their Umrah, now the Hajj is starting, or there are people living in Mecca and they want to do ifrad, or there are people who came into the Haram area without the ihram anyway, and now they want to do Hajj. So for these people and others as well, if they, in fact on the 8th day you don't do Qiran. So it's basically for these people. Then they go into ihram. The scholars say that what is it? Before dhuhr you go into ihram. So what do you do for ihram? Here the same as what we mentioned, similar to what we mentioned last time. The scholars say those sunan before ihram of ghusl and those things we mentioned of perfume, etc., and to what to wear, etc., it applies here as well. So they mentioned that it is recommended that you perform tawaf and then 2 rak'ah after tawaf. Then now you make your intention to go into your Hajj, okay? You can do, and they say it's better if you can do it as close to the Kaaba as you can. So they mentioned in the past to go right under the mizab of the Kaaba, where the water basically when it rains and it flows down, they say to do it like to go as close as that, which is today kind of almost impossible. But again, the reward for knowing the rule and that you would apply it. So you can do it anywhere in the Haram, anywhere outside the Haram as well. You go into ihram and then you go to Mina. You perform Salatul Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha there in Mina, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in this hadith. And all of these actions on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, they are all sunnah. Nothing is wajib. And you spend the night there in Mina. And the spending the night in Mina is also, it's not wajib. It is sunnah to spend the night in Mina. Then after Fajr the next morning, so now it's the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, it's the day of Arafah, right? Then after sunrise, then you go to Arafah. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to the part of Arafah called Namira. It's where the mosque is now. So the sunnah would be that you spend time until Zawal comes in Namira. Then it's there where the Imam will give a khutbah. And then you perform Dhuhr and Asr and you join the Salah. You perform Dhuhr and Asr and you join the Salah there at Namira on the day of Arafah. So who joins the Salah? Those who it's allowed for them to join the Salah. So therefore a traveler allowed for him to join the Salah, and people with other reasons that allow them to join the Salah, we'll mention it when we come to the fiqh of it, those people can join the Salah. Therefore on the madhab, the person from Mecca, he doesn't join the Salah. But the riwayah thaniya that's very strong is that even those from Mecca, they join the Salah. Because the hadith says Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam prayed dhuhr and asr, and those with him prayed dhuhr and asr. So there's no specific differentiation between where are you from Mecca or not from Mecca, traveling distance or not. Everyone who is there at Arafah, they pray dhuhr and asr. They pray dhuhr and asr. Except that those who are not travelers, they don't shorten the salah. They don't shorten the salah. So then, here in the hadith of Jabir radiallahu anhu, it's where he quotes the amazing hadith, that the amazing khutbah that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did on the farewell Hajj. This khutbah is very deep and it needs its own lecture, even more than one lecture in fact. It's a very deep khutbah, but we'll read it, we'll translate it and go through it because of time. Therefore we won't unpack it deeper. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that your blood and your wealth are sacred, like the sacredness of this day. And the sacredness of this day in the sacred month. And as sacred, your blood and your wealth, and blood and wealth of your fellow Muslims are sacred as this day in the sacred month, in the sacred city. And then he said, ألا كل شيء من أمر الجاهلية تحت قدم موضوع ودماء الجاهلية موضوعة. He said, return the goods entrusted to you to the rightful owners. Hurt no one so that no one may hurt you. And remember that you will meet your Lord and that He will indeed reckon your deeds. Allah has forbidden you to take riba, therefore all interest obligations shall henceforth be waived. Your capital is yours to keep. So your capital is yours to keep. Anything beyond that was riba, that is not permissible. You have to give it back. You will neither inflict nor suffer any inequality. Allah has judged that there shall be no interest and that all interest due to Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib be waived. He also waived Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for his uncle. Interest completely gone. Every right arising out of homicide in pre-Islamic days is henceforth waived. And the first such right that I waived is that arising from the murder of Rabi'a ibn al-Haritha. O men, he says, O men, the unbelievers indulge in tampering with a calendar to make permissible that which Allah has forbid and to prohibit that which Allah has made permissible. With Allah the months are 12 in number. 4 of them are holy, they are successive and one occurs singly between the months of Jumada and Sha'ban. Beware of shaitan for the safety of your religion. He has lost all hope that he will be able to lead you astray in big things, so beware of following him in small things. O people, it is true that you have certain rights with regards to your woman, but they also have rights over you. Remember that you have taken them as your wives only under Allah's trusts and with His permission. If they abide by your right, then to them belongs the right to be fed and clothed in kindness. Do treat your women well and be kind to them, for they are your partners and committed helpers. And it is your right that they do not make friends with anyone of whom you do not approve, as well as never be unjust. O people, listen to me in earnest. Worship Allah, say your 5 daily prayers, fast during the month of Ramadan and give your wealth in zakah. Perform Hajj if you can afford it. All mankind is from Adam and Hawa. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also a white has no superiority over a black, nor a black has any superiority over white, except by piety and good action. Learn that every Muslim is a brother to every Muslim, and that the Muslims constitute one brotherhood. Nothing shall be legitimate to a Muslim which belongs to a fellow Muslim, unless it was given freely and willingly. Do not therefore do injustice to yourselves. Remember one day you will meet Allah and answer your deeds. So beware and do not astray from the righteous path after I am gone. So we'll mention that part of the summary of the sermon of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is actually a very deep khutbah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we can understand as we hear it. He gave such a deep sermon on this place in front of so many Sahaba, with so many gems for us to apply in our lives. It actually needs a whole lecture of you itself to unpack it. It regards to wealth of people and treating your women and so many things. But we'll just take the fiqh from the rest of the hadith. In fact, after he did the whole khutbah, then he says, they said, Ya Rasulullah, nashhadu annaka qad ballaght. They said, Ya Rasulullah, we bear witness that you've completely conveyed your message and that you advised us and you've done what Allah has commanded you to do. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam picked his finger up and raised it to the sky, and he said, Allahumma ashhad, Allahumma ashhad. Oh Allah, bear witness that they've borne witness that I've delivered my message. He did it 3 times. Thereafter, and then here Bilal radiallahu anhu gave the adhan, then iqamah, then they prayed dhuhr and asr. So therefore when you join salah, you do 1 adhan and 2 iqamah. You do 1 adhan and 2 iqamah. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not pray any sunnah or anything between them. So the salah were directly after each other. So then this is now on the day of Arafah. This is now the day of Arafah. Then after you've prayed dhuhr and asr, now as you're going later into the day, it's the best time for dua. Now it's the best time of dua on the best day of the year. So then here you go to the mountain it's called now is Jabal Rahmah, the mountain of Rahmah. You go there and there's a few rocks there. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went there riding with his camel, and then he faced the Qibla. He faced the Qibla and the rocks were there as well. So a person, if they can go there, sometimes in the heat you can't go there, or because of the way things are set up, according to the administration, how they did it, then maybe you can't reach there. Again, the benefit of knowledge. But if you could, then you go to there. The scholars say that you do not climb the mountain. You do not climb the mountain. You stand on the mountain. You stand by the mountain rather. And then here you raise your hands and you supplicate. You raise your hands and you supplicate. And you spend the whole rest of the day in dua. It's the best time for dua and the best day for dua. And if you are not in Hajj, then you have certain similarities in those days of Hajj to the people of Hajj. The people of Hajj, things are prohibited for them in Ihram, removing hair, nails, etc. Those who are slaughtering, they also have their share. They also don't remove hair and nails and things like that. The people of Hajj will slaughter. The people not in Hajj have their share with slaughtering the animal as well. The people of Hajj, they have their Arafah. People not in Hajj have fasting. They have fasting and they have dua as well, and dua of fasting as well. So Allah even gives those who are not at Hajj their share. So those who are still not in Hajj, it's still a day of dua. It's still a day of dua. So the best dua to say on the day of Arafah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said the best thing that I and any of my brothers from the Prophets said on the day of Arafah is La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. That's the best dua to repeat. And then to ask Allah everything until sunset. Thereafter, once sunset hits, then you leave Arafah to go to Muzdalifah. Now the scholars say you leave Arafah to go to Muzdalifah. It's makruh to leave before the Imam. The Imam of Hajj was usually the Amir of Mecca. He leaves first. And usually his tent will be right at the edge of Arafah. So then he'll be the first one to be able to leave. If you left before him, it's valid. And you go to Muzdalifah. But just a few masail with regards to Arafah, the scholars say what I mentioned here is the complete sunnah. That you spend from the day, and then the night comes, and then you leave. But what you have to do is spend even a few seconds at Arafah during the day or night, and you would have caught Hajj. You would have caught Hajj as a start. The time of Arafah, usually in Islam, the night comes before the day. The night becomes before the day. That's why in Friday, for example, we recite Salah and Salam on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Thursday night it starts. Though the day of Friday is the next day. But here, and for fasting, Taraweeh, Ramadan, the night comes first. For Arafah, it's in reverse. The day comes first, then the night comes after. So Arafah starts, the mashhur of the madhab is that it starts from sunrise. From sunrise to sunrise. The riwayah thaniya is that it's from zawal. Right? You have to pass Arafah in the state of ihram, even if you don't know it is Arafah. Because Urwa radiallahu anhu, he passed a few mountains and he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, Ya Rasulullah, I didn't know which one is exactly Arafah, but I've passed many mountains. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that your Hajj counts. So he didn't know that he was passing Arafah. So therefore you don't even need to know it's Arafah. As long as you are not insane or unconscious or drunk. If you are in those three, even if you're in Ihram, your standing at Arafah won't count. But if you were like that, one of those three, then you became sober again, or you became conscious, or you became sane again, and you were still at Arafah, it would count. Or you could go back to Arafah before the time comes out, then it would count. Right? In fact, the time of Arafah is from Fajr on the day of Arafah to Fajr on the day after, the day of Eid, the day of slaughtering. So not sunrise as I mentioned moments ago, it's actually from Fajr to Fajr. So we said the complete sunnah. Now a person should if he stains, there's a few situations. Let's say number one, he comes to Arafah in the day, and then he leaves. The scholars say that if he leaves Arafah in the day, then he must come back at night. Right? He must come back at night. If he doesn't come back at night, then he has to give them. He has to give them for leaving a wajib. Then number 2, he goes in the day, but he comes back and he stays then until sunset, and after sunset. Then perfectly fine. Or he goes in the day, he is that Arafah in the day, he goes away and he comes back after sunset, again it's fine. He spent a portion of the day and a portion of the night. Another situation is where we mentioned he spends only the day. Another situation is where he spends only the night, or he reaches Arafah only at night. Then in this case, it will be valid. Any time before Fajr on the day of slaughtering, on the 10th or the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, if he just came at night, then it's fine, he's done the wajib and there's no dam or anything for not reaching the day. And if he didn't reach Arafah at all, then his Hajj for the year won't count. Either it will be fawat or something like that has its own rules. Inshallah we'll mention it if the Shaykh mentions it, or I'll mention it anyway. So that's with regards to Arafah. Now, you leaving Arafah, you go to Muzdalifah. So here, what happened is, the hadith says that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba left Arafah to Muzdalifah, then here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ayyuhan nas as-sakina as-sakina." He said, "Go in tranquility, go peacefully." And then when he saw a gap, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then he'd go faster. He'll cause his camel to go faster. So when you have a chance to go, then you can go a bit faster. Otherwise, go in peace and sakina, go in tranquility. Okay. Then you go to Muzdalifah. There's a path between. You go to Muzdalifah. When you reach Muzdalifah, then you perform Maghrib and Isha. You join Maghrib and Isha. If you were to perform it on your way to Muzdalifah, it would be valid. The sunnah is to perform it at Muzdalifah and join the salah. Unless you're getting delayed to the extent where the waqt of ikhtiyar of Isha will go out. Because you're on the road, you're waiting, and the waqt of ikhtiyar of Isha will go out, then you pray it at where you are. Otherwise, when you reach Muzdalifah, then you pray Maghrib and Isha and you join them. Thereafter, the hadith says Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't pray anything between them. Again, it was one adhan and iqamah. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam rested. He rested until Fajr. So when it comes to Muzdalifah, it's obligatory to spend half the night. In Muzdalifah. So how do you count half the night? You to get the time, you take the time Fajr comes in, the time Maghrib comes in. Let's say it's 10 hours. So you say 5 hours is half the night. So let's say 12 hours. 6 p.m. Maghrib comes in, 6 a.m. Fajr comes in. So therefore 12 p.m. on the dot, or 12 a.m. on the dot, it's half the night. So when we say at Muzdalifah you spend half the night, it means that you cannot leave Muzdalifah before 12 a.m. Before midnight, you cannot leave Muzdalifah. You have to spend a portion, even a minute, even a few seconds at Muzdalifah after 12 a.m. That's a must. Therefore, if you are in Muzdalifah, once 12 a.m. comes, you spend time there, you reach 12 a.m., then you can leave. If you reached after 12 a.m., then you reach Muzdalifah, you can leave no dam. Right? So the point is to reach Muzdalifah for a portion of the night after half the night. If you reached Muzdalifah after Fajr came in, then you have to give them. The fatwa of the mashayikh is if you couldn't reach Muzdalifah before the time of Muzdalifah goes out, which is the time of Fajr, before that time, then the fatwa of the mashayikh is if there was a valid reason why you couldn't reach Muzdalifah, like traffic, etc., then there's no dam. The zahir kalam of the fuqaha is merely not reaching Muzdalifah by Fajr, it means dam. Okay, so a person who reaches after midnight, no dam. Before midnight, then you have to stay until after midnight. You just need to be present there. You don't need to actually sleep. And then another mas'ala is that after midnight, you can then leave. It's permissible to leave for the next ritual. The sunnah is to stay until after sunrise and do the rest of the things we're going to mention as we mention it. But otherwise, it is permissible to leave after midnight. And for those who have an excuse, like the elderly, or like it's not elderly per se, that's not an excuse just like that, but being ill, or people who have, they fear for their wealth, or there's something that causes them to need to leave earlier. In the past, the examples of the fuqaha would be those who had to serve people zamzam, or those who had animals to look after. They had such needs. Then those people can leave Muzdalifah before half the night. They can leave Muzdalifah before half the night. Otherwise, you have to leave after night. Otherwise, you have to spend until half the night, and then you can leave. The sunnah would be to stay until Fajr. Then when Fajr hits, then here at the Ghalas, as soon as Fajr comes in, then you pray Fajr. Thereafter, you go to Al-Mash'ar al-Haram. Then, when you go to Mash'ar al-Haram, some of the scholars say that Mash'ar al-Haram is a mountain. It's a little mountain. Others say it's where the masjid now that's currently there built, that's what's Mash'ar al-Haram. It is the mountain that's now a mosque is there. Others say it's a tree, or others say it's the whole valley. It's the whole part of Muzdalifah is called Mash'ar al-Haram. So you go there, close somewhere there, and then you supplicate. Then you, as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did, he said the takbir, he said la ilaha illallah, and he praised Allah, and then he supplicated. He supplicated, raising his hands in dua until it became really bright, but before sunrise. Until it became really bright, but before sunrise. Then he completed his dua, and then he went off before sunrise towards Mina. This is now on day 10. Right? So now you go to Mina. And on your way to Mina, there's a part between Muzdalifah and Mina called Wadi al-Muhassir. This, you can see boards that are written there. This is where some say that it's where the people of the Abraha and his army came, and they were killed, they were destroyed there at Wadi Muhassir. So it's there at Wadi Muhassir that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam rushed through. He rushed through. It's the place between Muzdalifah and Mina. It's a valley there. So they say there you rush qaid rimha. Some say rimha, some say ramha. So therefore it would affect the meaning of it. But we'd say it's like if you were to throw an arrow. For the distance that you throw the arrow, you rush for that period of time. So in other words, in terms of time, you rush for like 1 minute. If you are walking, you now start rushing for like 1 minute, the distance of 1 minute. Or if you're on an animal on your car, if it were possible, now there's many cars there, so some of the scholars say the sunnah would fall even, because there's cars you can't really rush. But therefore, for knowledge and your intention, you'd get the reward. So you rush there, and it's here as well, at this time, that it is sunnah to gather your stones or your pebbles for pelting the jamarat. So the scholars say it is permissible to gather your stones from anywhere other than in the haram area itself. So anywhere else, then you get your stones. You get how many stones? You get 70 stones. To pelt on this day, using 7 stones to pelt one of the jamarah, and then the next 3 days, you go to pelt 7 pelting on each one. So that's 21, 63 plus this day's 7 takes you to 70. So you take 70 pebbles. What kind pebbles? They say it mustn't be too large and not too small. So some of them say it must be the size that you can put it between your forefinger and your middle finger, and its size is a decent size enough to throw comfortably. If you can do that, then means it's not too big, because if it's too big you can't really throw, and if it's too small you'll barely be able to hold it to throw. So you get a medium size, a decent size stone. It must be stone, it must be a stone, pebble, something like that. So not something else. You can't throw a ring or a jewel or something like that, or money or something, coins. No, you must like a pebble, and you take that. It's not sunnah to wash the pebble. So you take that pebble, you gather them, and then you go to Mina. When you reach Mina, then you would have come in from Muzdalifah, right? You're reaching the Jamarat, and then Mecca is in front of you. The Mecca is in front of you, Mina is behind you. So if you are walking in your distance towards Mecca, Mecca is in front, Mina is behind, then on your right, you'd pass now the Jamarat. So if somebody wants to picture what I'm saying, maybe they can go on the internet or on YouTube or something to see how the Jamarat looks, if they're not sure, if they don't know how it looks. But basically now there's many floors for the Jamarat. And what happens, it's like a pond. There's like 3 ponds. It's large structures, like there's like a wall kind of a thing built. There's a wall kind of a thing, 3 of them, and like a pond going around it. There's a pond going around it. So what happens here, it's a pond that's slanting, so that if you throw a stone, it will fall into the pond and go downwards. It will fall into the pond and go downwards. So what actually happened is that in the past there was no wall kind of a thing there. It was just a small mountain that Ibrahim alayhi salam threw, pelted. And the earth, we mentioned it last time with the mountains of Safa and Marwa, the earth gradually with time, it goes higher and higher. So as the earth was going higher, then the mountain, remnants of the mountain was going less and less. It was going less and less. So things were put, like stones and things like that were put to show that this is the circumference of the mountain. And this stones and things kept being put as the earth is going higher to show the circumference of the mountain. So until today, on the bottom floor at the basement, the original circumference of the mountain is there. But going up further, they've made this big structure. There's a big structure that is built, but I said there's a pond around it. It goes slanting downwards. So when people throw the pebbles, it will go into the pond and it will end up at the exact same circumference and place where Ibrahim alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam threw. It's the exact same circumference, but going from there high on top downwards into this place where the circumference of the mountain is. So what happens here is that now you have this thing that I mentioned. It's a big structure in front of you. With regards to pelting, you do not need to pelt the structure. You do not need to pelt that wall kind of structure. You need to make sure that the stone goes within the pond. Once it goes into the pond, even if you threw it, let's say it hit the structure, it went out, then it came in to the pond and went down, that's valid. Or you were to throw it in a manner it hit something and went into the pond, it's valid. So the point is not to hit the structure. You don't need to hit the structure. You need to throw. So therefore when you say throw, it means you do not place. If you're to place the stone into the pond, not valid. Number 2, you have to throw 7 throwings. So you cannot throw all 7 stones in one go, or 2 or 3 in one go. You have to throw one per throwing. And then when it comes to the throwing, the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam lifted his arm, he threw with his right hand. As some of the scholars say, you have to throw with your hand if you have a hand and are capable to do so. So you raise your hand until the whiteness of your armpit can be seen. And then you throw. And you say Allahu Akbar with each throwing. And some of the Sahaba would also say, Allahumma ij'alhu hajjan mabrura wa sa'yan mashkura wa dhanban maghfura. Oh Allah, make this an accepted Hajj and forgive my sins and reward me for all my efforts during the Hajj. So you do that with each throwing. So here on this day of Eid, you throw the jamara, that is the jamara of Aqaba. So the jamara of Aqaba is the last jamara. When you entering Mina, you're going to have 1, 2, 3 jamarat. So you're going to the last jamara. So in the past, this jamara, in front of it, there was a small mountain. Thereafter, the mountain was removed and there was a small wall. And now the wall is removed. So when we said there was the mountain there, the scholars allow a person to throw these jamarat from on top, because Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu went on the mountain and he threw from on top. But otherwise, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what did he do? He came into the valley. It was a valley, and he went in the middle of the valley, and he faced the Qibla. This is on the madhab. They use the few riwayat of this hadith. So you face the Qibla. So the Qibla is in front of you. And we said then the jamarat are on your right side. So you do it in a manner where the Qibla is in front of you, and the jamara, the one you're pelting Aqaba, you'll see everyone going to it if you're there. It's basically in line with your right eyebrow. So it's basically slanted. You're facing the Qibla. Qibla is in front, and the jamara is slanted to you. And then you take your hand and you throw. Allahu Akbar, Allahumma ij'alhu hajjan mabrura, and you do what I said. So you do that on this day of Eid, the day of slaughtering. And then after you've pelted 7, then you do not stop for dua. You carry on after. Thereafter, After you've pelted, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, after he pelted, Jabir radiallahu anhu says, ثُمَّ انصَرَفَ إِلَى الْمَنْحَرِ. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam went to the area that was designated for slaughtering. And it's there where he slaughtered 63 camels with his hand, and the rest of the camels Ali radiallahu anhu slaughtered. That connects to earlier in the hadith where I mentioned of Ali radiallahu anhu coming in with the animals. So after a person is pelted, then the sunnah would be to slaughter your animal. So if you are doing Hajj as a mutamatti' or qarin, and you're not from the people of Mecca or the Haram, outside the Haram, as we'll explain it in the next lesson inshallah, then here it's obligatory on you to slaughter an animal if you can afford it, right? On this day, you look at this day is the day of wujub. The day of wujub is this day. If it's not obligatory on you, then it is sunnah to slaughter an animal if you can afford it. If it's obligatory on you to slaughter an animal, but you couldn't afford it, then here you would fast. You would fast 3 days in Hajj and 7 days after Hajj. In the manner we'll explain inshallah in one of the upcoming lessons. And connected to that, we mentioned at the beginning that on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah it is sunnah to wear the ihram. But on the madhab, it is mustahab for this person who doesn't have the funds to buy an animal, and it's obligatory on him to buy an animal, to slaughter an animal. This person cannot afford an animal, then it is mustahab for him to wear the ihram before the 8th day, so that he can fast. Mustahab for him to fast in ihram, and therefore they say for him to fast, to put ihram on day 7. So he can fast day 7, 8 and 9, the 3 days of Hajj. And then day 9 would be his last day of fasting. And other scholars in the madhab say he fasts from day 6, 7, 8. So on 9, the day of Arafah, is not fasting, so he can have more strength for dua, etc. So that's for that person. More details or exact details of that we'll mention in the upcoming lesson. So therefore, after you slaughtering, those who are slaughtering will slaughter, right? After slaughtering, then you shave your hair, then you cut your hair. And the rules of cutting the hair is exactly as we mentioned after Umrah. All those things now apply here. And therefore, with regards to after you've done these 3, right? We said pelting, and we said slaughtering, if you are going to slaughter, and then cutting your hair. So we look at 2 things out of these 3, and that is pelting and cutting your hair. If you've done these 2 things, then you've done, they call it the first tahallul. So tahallul means when you go into ihram, we said ihram means things become haram on you. So now some things become halal on you if you've done these two things. Then some of these things become halal. That's why they call it tahallul, from halal. And then you do these 2 things. We said shaving the hair, cutting the hair, one of the 2, for a lady to cut the hair, and pelting the jamrah. The other 2 things is tawaf, the main tawaf of Hajj, tawaf was ziyarah, we're going to mention it now, and also sa'i if a person hasn't done sa'i already, we'll mention it now. So once a person has done all 4 things, then he's completely out of ihram. But when he's done 2 of the things, then he's now out of ihram. He is a portion out of ihram. Therefore, everything that was impermissible for him before he did these 2 things, they will now become halal for him, permissible for him, except those things connected to a female. So intercourse, things coming pre-intercourse, all of those things, touching a lady with desire, touching the opposite gender with desire, and intercourse, impermissible. Even doing the nikah, etc., is still impermissible. So those things connected with the female, those things are still impermissible. Those things are the last thing that are impermissible. And also, that sequence between these 2 or 3 things that I mentioned, it's not obligatory. You can do it in any way. That you like. It's not obligatory, and it will only be makruh if you know that it's sunnah to throw the jamrah first and then pelting and then slaughtering. So if you did it knowingly and you change the sequence, it will be permissible, but makruh. Some of the fuqaha say makruh, some don't. Okay, but otherwise it's permissible. It's permissible to do it in any order. And then after you've now shaved your hair, removed your hair, then you go to Mecca. So then meaning you go to the Kaaba. The hadith says then فَصَلَّى بِمَكَّةِ Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed in Mecca. So that's because Mecca was very small. It was within the Haram. So now basically you're still in Mecca, it's a big city, but now you go to the Haram, after shaving your hair. And therefore, or thereafter, you perform the main Hajj tawaf. It's called tawaf al-ziyarah. It's the main Hajj, the main tawaf you do in Hajj. So now the scholars say, the mashhur of the madhab is that a mutamatti', he does tawaf of qudum first. He does a tawaf that's basically the equivalent of tahiyyatul masjid when entering the mosque. He does a tawaf al-qudum, 7 rounds without iltiba' and without ramal, and thereafter he does tawaf of Hajj without ramal, right? And the qarin and the person doing ifrad, right? These two, we'll mention exactly how it works for them and the method of doing Hajj of Qiran and Ifrad in the next lecture. But basically these two basically wore the Ihram and they are doing now Mufrid. The person doing Ifrad is only doing Hajj, right? And Qarin is doing Umrah and Hajj in one without Tahallul, without having shaved his hair after Umrah. So these two, the mashhur of the madhab is that if they came to Mecca before the day of Hajj, before this day, and they came to the Haram and they did tawaf of Qudum, right? Then that counts, that suffices. That means on the day of Hajj, these two would only do the main tawaf of Hajj. If they didn't come to Mecca beforehand and do the tawaf, then now they do tawaf Qudum and then ziyarah as well. But the riwayah thaniya, it's chosen by many of the fuqaha and it's a very strong opinion, along with many of the other ulama outside the madhab, is that when any of these three come on the day of Hajj, then they just do the tawaf of Hajj. They do the tawaf of Hajj because they say, just like in the tahiyyatul masjid, if it's fard salah, then tahiyyatul masjid will be counted into the fard salah. So the same here with Hajj. You do the main tawaf and then the opening tawaf would count inside for all three people. When we say this is tawaf with ziyarah, these people would not do ramal and also not do iltiba'. All three, the mutamatti', the qarin and the mufrid, all three would just do the main tawaf of Hajj. Thereafter, after doing the tawaf of Hajj, then the mutamatti' has to do sa'i. He would have done sa'i with his umrah and then ended his umrah. Now for Hajj he has to do sa'i. The person who did qiran and is doing qiran and ifrad, if they entered Mecca earlier and they did tawaf al-qudum, then they can do sa'i after. And this sa'i, if they do it, it will count as the sa'i of Hajj. Therefore on this day of Hajj, after their tawaf of ziyarah, then there's no sa'i. And if they didn't do sa'i, if they entered Mecca, the Haram already, and did tawaf al-qudum and they didn't do sa'i, or they didn't enter Mecca with the Haram beforehand, then they do sa'i now. Okay, so they do sa'i now. Thereafter, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself, after his tawaf, and then he went and prayed in the Kaaba. After his tawaf. So that would be a sunnah if a person were able to do so. You enter the Kaaba and you pray salah in the Kaaba. Otherwise, then you do your sa'i if sa'i needs to be done. And for your tawaf of Hajj, there's no end time for it. And also there's no end time for your sa'i. You can do it any time in the future. So if I remember, there's a mas'ala when we come to the tawaf of wida', I'll mention it with this mas'ala of the fact that tawaf of ziyarah doesn't have an end time. But it has a beginning time. Its beginning time is from half the night of Muzdalifah. Because we said you are allowed to leave Muzdalifah at half the night. So then a person who leaves Muzdalifah, he can continue on to pelt the jamarat. The pelting of the jamarat also starts after half the night. Not the jamarat, the jamara, the one jamara, after half the night. After half the night you can pelt the jamara. And you can do the rituals, the remaining rituals. And you can then do tawaf of Hajj after half the night. But this mas'ala of this aspect of after half the night, then this is for a person who already was at Arafah. Otherwise he has to go stand at Arafah and then Muzdalifah if there's time, and then he can come to do the tawaf of ziyarah, because Arafah is the main thing. Muzdalifah, if you didn't do it, you have to give the dam. If you didn't do it when you could have done it, you give the dam, as we mentioned. So thereafter he's done the sa'i and he's done the tawaf, then he drinks zamzam again, as we mentioned earlier. Then he goes back to Mina. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then went back to Mina. So in their time they mentioned Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually he performed dhuhr in Mina. So in their time, that's why the fuqaha say then a person performs dhuhr in Mina. Like it's so, today it's almost, there's so many crowds and things like that that you may not at all reach Mina, or very few will reach Mina by the time of dhuhr. But otherwise, you pray dhuhr at Mina, it would be a sunnah. But what is obligatory is to then spend the night in Mina. To spend the night in Mina. So you spend 2 or 3 nights in Mina. It's perfectly fine to do either. If you are in a rush to leave back to Mecca, wherever you want to go, then you spend 2 nights. If you do not spend at least 2 nights, then you give 1 dam. But we say spending the night at Mina, here at Mina you have to spend a certain duration. And the fuqaha of the madhab, they differ on how much is the duration. But many scholars go with what Shaykh Mar'i, Yusuf bin Mar'i al-Karmi says, along with also Shaykh Taqiyuddin in Sharh al-Umda. And that is, you have to spend half the night. So you take again from sunset to Fajr. How many hours? Let's say it's 6 to 6, so 12 hours. So therefore, half is 6 hours. So here you don't look at the time. You have to spend 6 hours. 6 hours in Mina. At any time of the night. You have to spend 6 hours in Mina. If you spend less than that, then since we're saying 6 is wajib, therefore less than that means dam. Okay? And it's one ritual. So if you did less than 6 hours for 2 nights, you pay 1 dam. So therefore, that's why a person goes and has to spend half the night in Mina. It doesn't matter how he spends it, sleeping, awake, it doesn't matter, but he has to here spend the hours. In Muzdalifah, he doesn't have to spend the hours. Once half the night comes according to time, then that's what matters, that he spends a moment after half the night. Here he has to spend the amount of hours that half a night would come out to for Mina. Then sometimes a person cannot reach Mina because of crowds. So some of the mashayikh say here, like how it happens in a mosque. If the mosque is full, but the row continues outside, so therefore it would be, the person praying outside would be as if he's praying in the mosque. So they say if a person cannot reach Mina because of crowds, or because people are sleeping in the streets, so he can't basically pass to go through, or cars, so he can't reach, then if he is on the outskirts, in the sense that he's connected to Mina, and it's just these obstacles in his way to reach Mina, but he's outside and he spends this time outside connected to Mina, as if he's connected to Mina but he's on the outside, then that would count. So that's what some of the mashayikh say, and they don't say that it falls. And he does this for 2 or 3 nights, as we mentioned, right? Then the next day, then after Zawal, you have from Zawal to sunset to pelt the Jamarat. The next day, what you got to do, the only ritual of Hajj for the next 2 or 3 days is pelting the Jamarat. On the day of Eid, the day before, you have pelting from sunrise, right, until sunset. You have from sunrise to sunset as a sunnah after sunrise. Otherwise, you have from after half the night. Remember, we said you can leave Muzdalifah after half the night, and then you can go and pelt. So the time starts from after half the night until sunset. The sunnah would be after sunrise to go and pelt. So once sunset hits, then you cannot pelt for the day of Hajj. You have to pelt the next day. You have to pelt the next day for the previous day. And the next day you have from Zawal, or after Zawal, and it would be sunnah to pelt before Dhuhr, but after Zawal until sunset. Right, you pelt the Jamarat. You pelt the Jamarat in the same manner on 3 days, 2 or 3 days. You have the option. But this ritual of pelting over 2 or 3 days is deemed as one thing. Therefore, you do not need muwala. You can pelt one jamara early after Zawal and then come back towards the late afternoon and pelt the next one. You can leave all 3 out on one day and come the next day and pelt the 3. Or you can leave 2 out and on the 3rd day you come and pelt. That's all fine. And if you left some of them out, then you do one dam. So they're not deemed as 3 separate actions, they're deemed as 1 action. But it needs tartib. It needs sequence. And how would you do sequence? You do sequence with your intention. So if you left pelting on day 11 and day 12, the two days after Eid, then you came on day 13, you'd pelt with the intention of day 11, all three, then you'd pelt with the intention of day 12, all three, and then you'd come for day 13. The same way if you were to not manage to pelt on the day of Eid. Then the day after you pelt for Eid, and then for day 11, and then for day 11. So what would happen is, the rules, you have now 63 pebbles left, right? You take at least 21 with you, however many, maybe a bit extra in case you lose some of them, or you throw, it doesn't go into the pond, so whatever. So you take the pebbles with you, and now you start at the first Jamara. Today, on this day, for the next 3 days or 2 days, you'd start at the first Jamara. So what would happen here? In the past, it would not be an open pathway like how it is today. Today, you have the Jamara, and around it is open pathway. In the past, it wouldn't be. In the past, the first Jamara would be there, and there'd be space to walk on the right of it. There would be space to walk on the right of it, right? And then you go to, and then you walk forward, and then there'd not be space to walk straight. You would have to take a turn. You'd have to take a turn to walk on the left of the Jamara, to walk on the left of the next two Jamara. Today it's a full space. But based on what I said there, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he'd come to the small Jamara, he'd face the Qibla. The Qibla is in front, as we mentioned, and he'd put the Jamara on his left side. He'll put the Jamara on his left side. So the Jamara would be on your left, the Qibla would be in front of you, and basically you may even tilt a little bit, and then you'd pelt. So you'd tilt a little bit so that you can manage to pelt, and the pelting would be done in the same manner. Then you walk forward. So the scholars say ثُمَّ يَتَقَدَّمْ. He walks forward, and then he supplicates. So what they mean here by walking forward, they just say walk forward because the Jamara will be on his left. So they want that you walk forward where the Jamara will be on your left. So you walk forward, you can walk in a way where they say in a distance or a place, they say that you do not affect the crowd and you would not get injured when the others are pelting. So you walk away from the crowd in front, and here it's a place to supplicate. You raise your hands, you face Mecca, and you supplicate. And it's a place where you lengthen supplication. However long you are able to do, you lengthen the supplication. Thereafter you walk, and now in the past you would walk now, as I said, to where you now put the Jamara on your right. Today you have a path, you can walk straight. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he'd do, he'd walk now where he'd face the Qibla still, and the Jamara would be on the right. And then he'd pelt it now again. So again, maybe you'd be tilted a bit the other way, and then you'd pelt it, still facing the Qibla and also slightly the Jamara, and so you can pelt. The same way you do another 7. And then you go front and do the same way again to the last Jamara, where the Qibla is in front and it's on your right again. Similar to the previous day, and you'd pelt it 7, But after the second Jamara, then you'd walk again to the side or in front a bit to supplicate. And you'd lengthen the supplication again here. And then you'd go pelt the third one. And after the third one, you do not stop to supplicate. It's not sunnah to stop and supplicate after the third one. So you have the time period until Maghrib. When Maghrib comes, if you haven't pelted or you haven't completely pelted, then the next day you have to complete the pelting, or pelt again all 3, right? So you do this on day 11 and on day 12. Then on day 12, you have the option of leaving Mina. You do not need to spend the night. Okay? You do not need to at all. It's not makruh to leave or anything. You can decide if you are in a rush or you want to go, you can go, whether you're in a rush or not, or you want to spend the night. But the stipulation is that you must have left Mina by sunset. If sunset has come and you've not left, or you're at least not on the way leaving, but maybe because of crowds you've not left yet, but you're on your way out, but because of crowds you're trying to go, sunset comes. If you are like that, where you're in the crowds and trying to leave, but sunset came, then you are deemed as if you are leaving. Otherwise, you have to spend the night in Mina. The exception of spending the night in Muzdalifah and spending the night in Mina is for those people who, as we mentioned earlier, they have a reason to leave. They are weak, or they are sick, or they have something to attend to that's really urgent, or actually fuqaha mention examples like the wealth will go, they need to go and look after their wealth. It's similar to the shepherds that would be in the past. They would have to go look after their sheep and attend to them. then here these people, it falls. Spending the night in Mina and Muzdalifah falls. Okay? For these people that are in, they go to Muzdalifah, from these people who are excused, they are allowed to leave before half the night. They are allowed to leave before half the night. So they can pass Muzdalifah, they can achieve this aspect and then leave, So they do not need to spend until half the night. The others have to spend at least until half the night. Or they have to come after half the night and then they can leave. So if sunset came, and so night 13 now, then on day 13 you go and pelt in the same manner. And with that now you're on the brink of finishing your Hajj. Then there's one more thing to do now when you are done, when you now want to leave. So either you're going back now after you've pelted on day 13 or on day 12. If you stayed on to day 13, then this applies to you now. Otherwise on day 12 after you're done. Now if you are in Mina, you go back to the Haram. Or you're already at the Haram, now you want to leave to go out. So whether you're out of the Haram, the Masjidul Haram, or you at Masjidul Haram, you have to do a farewell tawaf. Unless you are a person living in, let's say, in the Haram area, or actually the scholars expanded and say you are in the city of Mecca, the city that we know today. The city of Mecca or the Haram area, then there's no farewell tawaf on you. There's no tawaf al-wida'. If you are living outside of Mecca, even close to the cities around that are not even the travel distance, like Jeddah, etc., then you have to do the farewell tawaf. It is wajib to do the farewell tawaf. If you do not do this wajib, then it is, you have to give a dam. You have to give a penalty of slaughtering the animal for leaving out a wajib. So now we said you can delay your tawaf of Hajj. If a person hadn't done the tawaf of Hajj yet, then he can do it now as well. He can intend the tawaf of Hajj, and it will count as a farewell tawaf. Because the objective of the farewell tawaf is that it's your last actions of Hajj. It's your last action in Mecca. It's your farewell action, farewell tawaf Hajj tawaf. So you could do it with the intention of the main Hajj. And if you've done the main Hajj, does the waqt of the farewell tawaf come. Therefore, if you've not done the farewell Hajj, then this tawaf yet doesn't come. This tawaf doesn't come. So therefore, if you've left Mecca, there's no dam on you yet if you haven't done the farewell tawaf, the wajib one. Because you still have to do tawaf or ziyarah. You have to do the main tawaf of Hajj. And you are basically still in ihram because you haven't completed your tahallul. You only done one tahallul because we said your Hajj tawaf and sa'i. So you could have done sa'i or not done sa'i. And tawaf we're saying you didn't do. So you'd still be in the state of ihram. And therefore the scholars bring a mas'ala of a person who left now in the case where he didn't do tawaf of Hajj. Then he goes out. There's a mas'ala for him similar to the person who left without doing wida'. That will connect the two. So now a person does the farewell tawaf. Thereafter, this tawaf is his farewell action in Mecca. Therefore, after the tawaf, you should leave. It's overlooked if you were to do something, if you were to spend time in Mecca doing something that connects to you leaving. So you're now going to your hotel and you're packing your bag. You're waiting for transport. You get something to eat. You buy something to eat, you buy something from the road, etc. So if what you are doing is connected to you leaving, then that's okay. Otherwise, you have to repeat the tawaf. So if you then did the farewell tawaf, then you went to shop. This doesn't have to do directly with prepping yourself to leave. Then you have to repeat the tawaf afterwards. Right? This farewell tawaf, you can do it at any day. It doesn't need to be on day 13 or day 12. You can do it any day. You could stay in Mecca or in Mina for another 5, 10, 15 days. And then before you leave, then you do the tawaf. So the point is that after the tawaf, the last thing you do, you get some food, for example, and you eat it, and then you're leaving. But you're eating too, so that you can have a meal and then leave. Or you're packing your things, or whatever you're doing, but it's connected to leaving, then you can just leave. Your tawaf doesn't need to be repeated. You do not need to redo your farewell tawaf. Then if a person left without doing the farewell tawaf, and then if he's not traveled the travel distance from, this is it would seem like from the way the fuqaha phrase it, from the haram, that it means from the haram, farewell, a travel distance from the haram. That's way within the city of Mecca compared to the outskirts of the city. If we were to say from Mecca and we mean the city of Mecca today, then that would be a few difference in the distance. But it would seem like they mean from the haram, from the haram. If you've not traveled the travel distance, then you can just come back. You can just come back and do your tawaf. Right? They say because you've traveled the distance, you're not a traveler. So it's as if you are still a resident, you can just come back and do your tawaf. If you've gone further than that, right? Then now, the moment you've gone the traveling distance, now you have to give them for leaving out the wajib. You have to give them for leaving out the wajib, even if you go back. Because the moment you've gone out of the travel distance, now it's as if you've left. Now you've left, and now them becomes obligatory on you. It becomes obligatory on you. So even if you go back now, you have to give them. You have to give them. So now, if you traveled the travel distance, less than the travel distance, and you don't go back, or you've traveled the travel distance and you went back even. The moment you hit the travel distance, there's them. And then the moment you do not go back and you haven't reached the travel distance, then whether you don't go back for a valid excuse or not, you have to give the dam for leaving out a wajib. The dam, etc. will explain in the next one or the one after, inshallah, on what is meant by dam exactly. It's basically you slaughtering an animal, a sheep, etc. Similar to udhiyah. So basically, this would be now the aspect of not doing the tawaf of wida'. But the scholars say that if a person went the travel distance and now he comes back, does he have to wear the ihram again? Does he have to wear the ihram again? This is a mas'ala that some of them say that they mention. And the mashhur of the madhab is that if a person decides that he's coming back and he's traveled the travel distance and beyond, so either he's passing a miqat. If he's passing a miqat, he has to wear the ihram from the miqat. If he's not and he's still within the miqat, he still hasn't passed a miqat, but he's more than the travel distance, then he wears his ihram there. And now he comes back to the haram. He comes back to the haram. The same thing they say if a person didn't do tawaf of ziyarah and then he went further, a travel distance. Then now when he comes back, does he have to wear the ihram? So the mashhur of the madhab is that he wears the ihram. He comes back and he wears the ihram, and then he does tawaf and sa'i, and he does umrah. Tawaf, sa'i, and then removes his hair. He removes his hair, if there's hair to remove, or if he's just out of his ihram, or he passes the blade over his head, if it's a male. And thereafter, he does the tawaf of ziyarah. He does the tawaf of ziyarah, or the tawaf of wida', And other fuqaha, Ibn Nasrillah and others say that the qa'idah of the fuqaha is that you do not wear an ihram while in ihram. And this is why Iqna' says that you come back even with the travel distance to the haram without ihram, because you're not completed yet with your rituals of Hajj, Though, with regards to tawaf of wida', you are already completed with your rituals of Hajj. You're out of your tahallul completely. So I'm just thinking, Ibn Nasrillah mentions it in some of the hawashi. They quote him in this mas'ala. But the person will be out of his tahallul. So maybe you can have a look at that. And for the tawaf of wida', the tawaf of ziyarah, then yes, he'd still be in a tahallul. So maybe what Ibn Nasrillah says applies more so to him, to the person who is not completely out of ihram yet, to a person who's not completely out of ihram yet. And that's why in Iqna' he says, you do not wear an ihram again. And Muntaha says that you wear the ihram again and you do umrah. So therefore, what the fuqaha say that the mashhur of the madhab is that you wear the ihram. And probably, maybe what some of the hawashi quote Ibn Nasrillah, it's not exactly for the mas'ala of leaving off tawaf of wida'. It's more so for tawaf of ziyarah. Because in tawaf of wida', a person would already be out of his second tahallul as well. So he would not be wearing ihram on ihram. And when it comes to the first tahallul, if you've the second one meaning, and you've not done tawaf of ziyarah, then some of the fuqaha say perhaps why the madhab says that you still wear the ihram, and it does not oppose the qa'idah of ihram, that you do not wear ihram on ihram, is that because you've done already one tahallul, so it's not a complete ihram. So when you wear a new ihram, when only the second tahallul is left, you'd not be exactly wearing ihram on ihram. So that's what they connect it to there. So that's with regards to a person who does not perform tawaf of wida'. The only exception of a person who's allowed to not perform tawaf of wida' is a lady in hayd or nifas. She is allowed to leave Mecca, to leave the haram without performing tawaf of wida', with the one stipulation that she does not become clean from her hayd or nifas before she leaves the boundaries of the fuqaha in the books. They say Mecca. Before she leaves the buildings or the settings or the surroundings or the borders of Mecca. So they meant more so Mecca in their time. So perhaps we can say the haram area or the city of Mecca. It's not really clear. I don't recall if I've come across any of the mashayikh who touched on this. So we'd have to check that one. But perhaps we can say the haram area. If she's in the car leaving to her destination outside Mecca, then even though she's still in the haram area when she's clean, but she's already on her way out, then it falls. Otherwise she goes back to clean herself and then to perform the tawaf of wida'. So then after a person performs tawaf of wida', then they say it is sunnah for him to go to the multazam, and that is between the Hajar Aswad and the door of the Kaaba. So a person there, he puts his face on the Kaaba and his chest on the Kaaba, his hands on the Kaaba, his forearms on the Kaaba, and he supplicates in that manner. Some narrations say that is a place of acceptance of dua. And there's some narrations, not from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but from Sahaba and some of the Salaf, that is a place of dua and a place of acceptance of dua. So if a person can do that, then he does that. The scholars say for a lady in hayd or nifas, she does her supplication at the door of the haram, because it's not permissible for them to enter the mosque. So she does her supplication at the door of the haram. So after the person supplicates at the multazam, then they say he drinks Zamzam. In his dua he includes salah and salam on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he drinks Zamzam. Then he can leave. Then he's done. And with that he had finished all of his actions of Hajj. And with that we also end there with the actions of Hajj. Then in the next dars we'll take the arkan of Hajj and the wajibat, etc., and the types of nusuk, inshaAllah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to teach us that which benefits us and benefit us with that which He teaches us. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.